1944, Berlin. A German housewife has been standing in line for bread since early morning. She holds ration cards in her hands. When her turn comes, the seller says, "No bread, only potatoes." She returns home, turns on the radio. The announcer declares in a cheerful voice, "Germany is invincible. Our troops are heroically fighting on all fronts." Outside the window, the wail of a siren, another bombing raid. She grabs her children and runs to the bomb shelter. They'll spend the next 4 hours there. Welcome to Germany in 1944, a country where propaganda screamed about victory, while reality screamed about survival. Today we'll tell you how ordinary Germans actually lived in the last year of the war, what they ate, what they wore, how they worked 72 hours a week, and why they traded a goose for 3 bottles of cognac. This is the story of how the Third Reich collapsed, not at the front, but on the home front. Let's start with what Germans saw and heard. 1944. The war has been going on for 5 years, but on the radio, only victories. Announcer Hans Fritzsche, commentator Kurt Dittmar. Every German knew their voices, trusted them unconditionally. Our troops are repelling enemy attacks. The Führer is developing a new brilliant plan. Wonder weapons are on the way. Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, personally controlled every word, every report. Trust in him, to be fair, had seriously wavered by 1944, but people believed the announcers. And what did Germans see in reality? Wounded men coming from the front, soldiers on leave with empty eyes, letters about the dead, bombings every night. Could they hide the Allied landing in Normandy, the defeat at Stalingrad, the army's capitulation in Tunisia? No, but propaganda did its job. It didn't deny defeats, it explained them. These are temporary difficulties. The enemy has thrown all its forces against us, but we will endure. And you know what? It worked. Germans continued to believe, continued to work, continued to fight, until the very end. But let's look at what they paid for this faith. August 25, 1939. Even before the war began, Germany introduces a rationing system. Hitler and his inner circle remembered World War I, hunger, death, destruction. They didn't want a repeat, so ration cards were introduced immediately for everything: meat, fish, bread, fats, sugar, salt, vegetables, milk. The population reacted calmly, even with understanding. People thought, this is temporary, the war will end quickly. But the war didn't end. In 1940, after the defeat of France, spoils flooded into Germany. Milk from Denmark, meat from the Netherlands, wine from France, even oysters. Rations on cards were sufficient. Life could be normal. But by 1944, everything changed. Rations on cards fell to 2/3 of the 1938 level, and that's not counting the fact that food quality sharply deteriorated. Why? Because there was one priority: feed the Wehrmacht. A German soldier received 57% more meat than a factory worker, and the factory worker worked 72 hours a week. Imagine, you work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. You're tired, you're hungry. You come home and they're potatoes. Potatoes again, because there's been no meat for 3 weeks. And you turn on the radio and there, Germany is invincible. Let's talk about work. With the start of the war, Germany increased income tax by 50%. Wages weren't reduced, but they introduced a system of payment delays. That is, you're supposedly getting paid, but you'll receive it later. When? Unclear. In 1940, they introduced a 10-hour workday, officially, with overtime pay. By the end of 1943, people were working 72 hours a week, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. For rest, 12 hours, of which you spend half in a bomb shelter because the Allies bomb cities every night. Sleep 4 hours, work 12, sleep 4 again, work again, and so on, month after month. And food rations are falling. Workers at metallurgical plants and military plants received additional rations, but office workers and agricultural workers, no. What about foreign workers? By 1944, 7,400,000 foreigners were working in Germany. That's a huge number. In agriculture, their labor reached 50%. In industry, 30%. Their rations were even lower than Germans. Meat was replaced with potatoes, bread also with potatoes. Jews weren't given ration cards for meat, fish, white bread, butter, or cigarettes at all. Now imagine you work 72 hours a week, eat potatoes, and suddenly your shoes tear. What to do? Buy new ones? Where? In 1940, they introduced imperial textile cards. Each item had a point value. A coat, 100 points. Shoes, 80 points. Underwear, 5 points. Germans, as usual, detailed everything down to the smallest item. But by 1944, these cards were catastrophically insufficient. Shoe problems began back in 1940 and by 1944 reached their peak. Clothing production stopped. All industry was converted to military needs. Sewing workshops no longer made new clothes. They repaired old uniforms for soldiers. And what did ordinary Germans do? They read fashion magazines. Yes, they continued to be published, but now they didn't feature fashion novelties, but advice on how to remake an old dress into a new one, how to sew a children's jacket from father's coat, how to make a blouse from old curtains, survival, improvisation, resourcefulness. But there was another Germany, the Germany of the black market. Officially, it was forbidden. For trading on the black market, you could end up in a concentration camp. But everyone knew it existed, and everyone used it. By early 1944, monetary trade in Germany had practically disappeared. Only barter remained. 10 cigarettes for 50 grams of meat. A goose for 3 bottles of cognac. A bottle of schnapps for a loaf of white bread. Remember the film Mein Führer? Hitler shouts, "Real coffee, Turkish, from the black market." This isn't a joke. Coffee during the war was in terrible shortage. Good coffee could only be obtained on the black market, for insane amounts, or for other scarce goods. People exchanged family heirlooms, grandmother's jewelry, grandfather's watch, for food, because surviving was more important than preserving memories. Now let's talk about children. Children's food rations were sufficient. Authorities understood children are the Reich's future. But there was one feature. From the first years of the war, children began to be forcibly evacuated to so-called recreational camps, away from cities. Why? First, it was salvation from bombings. By 1944, the Allies were bombing German cities every night. Dresden, Hamburg, Cologne, Berlin. Living in a city with children became deadly dangerous. Second, in camps, children could be fed centrally, in a balanced way. But parents resisted. They didn't want to be separated from their children. They feared losing them forever. And they were right. Many children evacuated in 1944 never returned home. Their camps fell under the Red Army's advance or under bombardments. And now, a paradox. Despite all this horror, leisure continued to function in Germany. Movie theaters, concerts, cinema even flourished. In January 1945, 4 months before capitulation, the film Kolberg was released. This was a propaganda masterpiece about the heroic resistance of a small town in Pomerania, besieged by Napoleon's army. Filming began in 1942. Enormous resources were thrown at the film, thousands of extras, real military units. Why? To show Germans, even when everything seems lost, you can win. You just need to not give up. Goebbels personally controlled the production of this film. People went to movie theaters, watched, cried, believed, and outside the window, their cities burned. By 1944, public transport in Germany was in a state of stagnation. Drivers were taken to the front. Buses were seized for army needs. The metro was used as a bomb shelter. Repairs weren't conducted. There were neither spare parts nor specialists. As for private cars, there weren't that many. More than in the USSR, but less than in the USA. And most importantly, there was no fuel. Gasoline went exclusively to Wehrmacht needs. German tanks, unlike Soviet ones, ran on gasoline, not diesel. This was Germany's strategic problem. There was no domestic oil. Synthetic fuel was produced, but it was only enough for the army. Civilians could forget about cars. They walked, rode bicycles, if lucky, on an overcrowded tram. So, let's sum up. Germany in 1944 was a country that continued to function despite everything. People worked 72 hours a week, ate potatoes instead of meat, wore patched clothes, hid in bomb shelters every night, exchanged family heirlooms for food on the black market, sent children to camps to save them from bombings, and yet continued to believe in victory. Because propaganda told them, "We will win." Because announcers on the radio spoke with confident voices, "The Führer has foreseen everything." Because movie theaters showed films about heroes who don't surrender. But reality was different. The Third Reich was collapsing, not only at the front, but also on the home front. The rationing system no longer worked. Industry couldn't cope. Transport stood still. Cities turned into ruins. On May 8, 1945, Germany capitulated. And people who had worked 72 hours a week for 5 years, who had starved, who had believed in victory, woke up in a completely different country. In a country that no longer existed.